Mom texted, "Don't call or come over. We're done." I replied, "Got it." And later. By midnight, my phone was blowing up. "My name is Claire, and I'm here to tell you a story about the moment my mother became a stranger to me." The text came through on a Tuesday afternoon while I was sitting at my desk at Henderson Marketing Solutions in Chicago. I was scheduling client presentations when my phone buzzed. I didn't think much of it. Mom texted all the time. Usually about nothing. A recipe she wanted me to try. A question about my apartment. But this one was different. "Don't call or come over. We're done." I stared at those 6 words for what felt like forever, my thumb trembling above the keyboard. The office noise around me, the keyboards clacking, the distant hum of conversations, suddenly felt a million miles away. I read it again. And again. Each time, it felt more real, more final. I typed back one word. "Got it." Then I turned off my phone, sat in the silence of my cubicle, and realized for the first time in my life, I was finally free. If you'd told me a year ago, even 6 months ago, that I'd feel relieved by my own mother cutting me off, I would have told you that you were cruel, that you didn't understand family. But that text wasn't random. It was the breaking point of nearly 30 years of manipulation, guilt-tripping, and betrayal. I'm 33 years old now. For most of my adult life, my mother treated me less like a daughter and more like a combination of 3 things: a wallet, a therapist, and a housemaid. My father died when I was 16, and from that moment forward, I was expected to step up. That's what she always said, "Step up, Claire." My younger brother, David, was the golden child. Charming, but lazy. Mom adored him. He could do no wrong in her eyes. Meanwhile, I was just the responsible one. The one who got things done. The one who didn't complain. At first, I didn't mind helping out. I genuinely wanted to. When my family needed me, I showed up. I took on part-time jobs during community college to help pay for groceries. When Mom's roof started leaking during a storm, I didn't hesitate. I covered the repair bill. When David crashed the Camaro he'd borrowed and needed help with the insurance deductible, I was there. I always had been. But here's the thing nobody tells you about giving. The more you give, the more people expect to take. And the less they see you as a person and more as a resource. A problem solver. A safety net. Looking back now, I can see exactly when it started to shift. It was gradual, like the sun going down. You don't notice it happening until suddenly it's dark. My father had worked his entire life, 35 years, at Parker Industries. He was a dedicated man. Principled. He saved meticulously, invested wisely, and always talked about providing security for our family. After he passed, he left behind a modest but comfortable estate. The crown jewel was the house in suburban Illinois, a beautiful colonial with a wraparound porch and a backyard where he'd grown those roses he loved so much. When he was alive, he used to tell David and me that the house would be ours someday. That we'd share it, that it represented the life he'd built for us. I held onto that promise like a lifeline for years. But by the time I landed my stable job as a project coordinator at Henderson Marketing, that promise started to feel like it was dissolving. And everything was about to change in ways I never could have anticipated. Within 2 months of my promotion, the requests started coming faster than before. More aggressive. More desperate. I was bringing home decent money, not Fortune 500 money, but enough to feel secure for the first time in my life. I wasn't stressed about rent. I could go to dinner with friends. I could put money into savings. I could breathe. But to my mother, my salary meant only one thing. I had become what she needed most. An ATM machine with a heartbeat. "Claire, your brother's struggling again," she'd say. He'd gotten fired from another job. The details didn't matter. "Claire, I need to borrow just a little to cover the electric bill." A little was never a little. "Claire, don't you want to help family?" That word, family, it became her favorite weapon every single time. Family meant I should give up my own comfort. Family meant that my dreams were less important than David's failures. Family meant that saying no was the same thing as being selfish. Family meant that love was measured in dollars and compliance, not in genuine care. When I hesitated even once, Mom would sigh dramatically. You know that sound, the one that makes you feel terrible before anyone says a word. "After everything I've done for you, Claire, this is how you repay me? This is how you show gratitude?" The guilt was suffocating. It wrapped around me like a thick blanket I couldn't shake off. But I kept giving anyway. I was paying half her rent. Half. Do you understand what that meant? I was essentially financing her lifestyle while she criticized how I lived mine. And David? He contributed nothing. Not a cent. But he was her favorite, so that was okay. I remember one Saturday morning, I went over to help her organize the kitchen. She'd never asked me to, I just showed up because that's what good daughters do. While we were working, she casually mentioned that David needed $1,000 for an investment opportunity, a business venture that was going to change everything. She wanted me to loan it to him. I looked at her and asked, "Mom, what happened to the money Dad left you?" She looked away. "I don't want to talk about that, Claire." That's when the first real crack appeared in my trust. The requests kept coming. A car insurance payment, help with David's rent when his roommate moved out, money for her friend's daughter's wedding gift because she didn't want to look cheap. It was constant. The financial drain was real, but worse was the emotional manipulation. The suggestion that I didn't love her if I didn't help, that I was being ungrateful, that I owed her everything because she'd sacrificed so much. I started having anxiety attacks. Real ones. I'd get home from work and feel this crushing weight on my chest. My heart would race. I'd check my bank balance obsessively, terrified that I'd be asked for money again and wouldn't have it, which somehow felt like the worst thing imaginable, disappointing her. But the real fracture, the thing that would eventually lead to everything falling apart, started exactly 2 years before that final text. It began with something I heard that I was never supposed to hear. It was a Thursday evening. I dropped by Mom's house, our family home, the one Dad built his legacy around, to bring over groceries. She had called earlier saying she wasn't feeling well, that she needed some soup and medicine. Being the dutiful daughter, I'd picked up ingredients at Whole Foods and driven over during my lunch break. As I unpacked the groceries in the kitchen, I heard her voice from the living room. She was on the phone. Her tone was hushed, almost conspiratorial. I recognized the voice on the other end immediately. "David." "She doesn't need to know, David," Mom was saying. "I already told the lawyer everything's in your name. She'll be fine." Claire always lands on her feet. She's independent. She doesn't need anything from this. My hands went cold. I stopped unpacking. I literally couldn't move. "Trust me," Mom continued. "When the time comes, we don't tell her until after it's all settled. There's nothing she can do anyway." The phone call ended, but I stayed frozen in that kitchen for what must have been 5 minutes. My mind was racing, connecting dots I should have connected years ago. The lawyer appointment she'd mentioned casually. The documents she never let anyone see. The way she'd been steering conversations about Dad's estate toward David for months. They were cutting me out. My mother and my brother were systematically erasing me from my own father's legacy. I left the groceries on the counter, got in my car, and drove away. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't explain. I just left. My chest was tight the entire drive home, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt something stronger than sadness. Something sharper. Clarity. Brutal, undeniable clarity. I'd been funding their comfort while they planned to erase me from my own father's legacy. And the worst part? I suddenly understood that this was never about love. It was about control. As long as I kept giving, kept helping, kept solving their problems, Mom had power over me. Power and access to my resources. But the moment I stopped being useful, the moment I pushed back or questioned her authority, she would punish me for it. The question was, did I have the strength to stop? Everything in me wanted to reach out, to call and confront, to make her understand. But something deeper, some voice I hadn't heard in a long time, whispered to me that it might be time to step away. I just didn't know how much damage that stepping away would cause. First, a week passed. 7 days of me sitting with what I knew. 7 days of playing it cool, of pretending nothing was wrong. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't discuss it with friends or a therapist. I just let it burn inside me, working through every emotion: rage, betrayal, hurt, fear. On the following Thursday, I called Mom and asked if I could come over. She sounded pleased to hear from me. Like she had no idea that I knew. Like she was still playing the role of the loving mother who cared about her sensitive daughter. When I arrived at the house, she'd baked cookies. My favorite, chocolate chip with walnuts. They smelled amazing, but I couldn't bring myself to eat one. We sat in the living room, and for a few minutes, we made small talk. How was work? Had I started dating anyone? Did I need anything? Then I took a breath and went for it. "Mom, I heard what you said to David. The conversation about the house. You're giving him everything, aren't you?" The room went completely silent. I watched her face. For just a second, I saw shock. Then it shifted into something colder. Calculating. "Pamela," she started, and then stopped herself. She almost called me by the wrong name. That's how thrown off she was. "Claire. Listen, it's complicated." "It's not complicated, Mom. You're giving him the house. Dad's house. Our house." She didn't even deny it. No apology. No explanation. Nothing. She just said, "He's your brother. He needs it more than you. You're successful, independent. You don't need help." I stared at her. Really looked at her. And I said, that house was Dad's wish for both of us. He was clear about that. He told us. She shrugged. Actually shrugged, like it meant nothing. Like my father's wishes meant nothing. Your father's not here anymore, is he? And that was it. That was the moment I knew the truth. This had never been about fairness. It had never been about love. It was about control. It was about keeping me compliant. As long as I believed I owed her everything, as long as I kept giving financially and emotionally, she held the power. But the moment I pushed back, the moment I questioned her authority or her decisions, she would punish me. She had proven it with that shrug, with that cold dismissal of my father's legacy. I'm done, I said quietly. I'm done helping. I'm done giving money. I'm done making excuses for you and David. Claire, you don't mean that. I mean it completely. And I did something I'd never done before. I stood up, walked out of that house, and I cut contact. Cold turkey. No explanations. No slow fade. No guilt-driven follow-up conversations. I just stopped. No more money. No more surprise visits with groceries. No more emotional rescues. No more being the responsible one who fixed everything. Within a month, the family began to turn against me. My Aunt Sarah called me at work, her voice dripping with concern. Your poor mother is heartbroken, Claire. How could you abandon her like this? My cousin Rebecca sent me a text. Mom says you're being really selfish. She raised you. She sacrificed for you. And this is how you repay her? The aunt started a group chat that I wasn't even on, but mutual friends told me what was being said. I was the ungrateful daughter. I was selfish. I was turning my back on family when she needed me most. Nobody asked my side. Nobody wanted to hear about the financial exploitation or the manipulation or the fact that my mother had systematically lied to me about my father's estate. The narrative was set, and I was the villain in everyone's story. The guilt tried to creep back in. Late at night, I'd lie awake and wonder if I was being too harsh. If I was making a terrible mistake. If I should just apologize and go back to the way things were. But then I'd remember that shrug. That cold shrug. And I'd remember my father, who had worked so hard to provide security for his children, both of them, equally. And I'd remember that real love doesn't come with conditions. Real love doesn't require you to sacrifice your own financial security or mental health or sense of self-worth. Real love doesn't ask you to stay quiet while you're being erased. For the first time in my adult life, I chose myself. I chose my own dignity. And even though it was terrifying and lonely and came with the constant judgment of people I'd known my whole life, I knew I'd made the right choice. What I didn't know is what came next. 2 months after I walked away, the silence was complete. It was almost peaceful. I wasn't checking my phone every 5 minutes, terrified of a request or a guilt trip. My anxiety lessened. The knot in my stomach that had been there for years began to loosen. I went out with friends from work. I splurged on a fancy dinner at Gibson's Steakhouse. I took a weekend trip to Milwaukee without consulting anyone or feeling guilty about spending money on myself. For the first time in my 30s, I was living like an adult who got to make her own choices. But nothing lasts forever. On a Tuesday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number. Then another. And another. Within minutes, my phone was lighting up with messages and missed calls. It was David. Claire, you need to call Mom. She's not doing well. Claire, this isn't funny. Mom is freaking out. You can't just abandon her like this. What if something happens? I didn't respond. I silenced the phone. That night, the actual text came. From Mom. Don't call or come over. We're done. I read it 3 times, half expecting to feel something. Sadness. Fear. Regret. But instead, I felt a strange kind of peace wash over me. A tired, liberating kind of peace. Because I suddenly realized that I wasn't the one ending the relationship. She was. She was removing herself from my life, probably expecting me to panic and beg her to come back. But I wasn't going to do that anymore. I was done chasing a love that had always come with strings attached. My reply was simple, got it. I didn't add anything else. No explanation. No defense. No attempt to change her mind. Just 2 words. And then I turned off my phone, set it aside, and sat in the silence of my apartment. For the first time in years, I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I didn't feel that crushing guilt that usually accompanied any conflict with my mother. I just felt free. 3 months later, on a Friday evening in October, my phone rang. I almost didn't answer it because I'd gotten good at not answering calls from unknown numbers. But something made me pick up. Claire. It was David. His voice sounded strange. Shaky. Almost afraid. David. Pam, sorry Claire. I'm sorry to call, but I need to talk to you about something. About Mom. Something in his tone made me sit down. Okay, what's going on? I'm in trouble, Claire. Big trouble. I just found out that Mom took out a home equity loan. Under my name. Without my permission. I felt my stomach drop. What? She said it was temporary. That she was in a cash flow crisis and needed help. But the bank froze my account because the loan went into default. They're threatening legal action. They think I'm the one who defaulted. But I didn't even know about it until today when I tried to buy something and my card got declined. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Then everything clicked into place like a puzzle that suddenly made sense. My mother had built her entire existence on the financial support of her children. When I pulled my support, when I cut contact, she turned to David, her beloved son, her golden child. And David, being lazy and irresponsible, had probably been too distracted or too trusting to pay attention to financial details. He'd probably signed documents without reading them, or maybe Mom had forged his signature. Either way, she'd used him the same way she'd tried to use me. But David's situation was exponentially worse than mine. This wasn't just about not having spending money. This was about legal implications. About his credit being destroyed. About potential criminal charges if authorities discovered what Mom had done. David, I'm sorry. I know you are. Look, I know things have been weird between us. I know you're mad at Mom. But you're her daughter. She listens to you. Maybe you could talk to her? Help me figure this out? And that's when I realized something crucial. David didn't understand what had happened. He didn't know about the inheritance being given to him and only him. He didn't know that our mother had been systematically manipulating both of us in different ways to serve her needs. David, this is going to sound harsh, but this is on Mom. Not on me. I can't fix this. I can't solve this. Claire, come on, no. Listen to me. You need to talk to a lawyer. You need to file a police report for fraud or identity theft. You need to protect yourself legally. I can give you the name of an attorney I know, but I'm not getting involved with Mom. But she's our mother. I know who she is, I interrupted, and my voice was colder than I intended. But being someone's child doesn't mean sacrificing yourself for their poor decisions. You're going to have to learn that the hard way, apparently. I gave him the lawyer's number, wished him luck, and hung up the phone. I didn't feel satisfaction exactly, but I felt the strange sense of confirmation that I'd made the right choice. My mother had turned to David because she needed someone to exploit, someone new to manipulate. And she'd gotten exactly what she deserved: a son who was just as irresponsible as she was, and a legal nightmare she couldn't solve with guilt tripping. I wasn't glad he was suffering, but I was glad I wasn't the one holding the bag anymore. 5 weeks later, my phone rang again. This time I recognized the number. It was Mom. My first instinct was to send it to voicemail. But something, curiosity, maybe, or just morbid fascination, made me answer. Hello, Claire. Her voice was small, fragile, almost unrecognizable. Honey, can we talk? Please? I almost hung up. But I didn't. I'm listening. I made terrible mistakes. I know I did. And I know I said we were done, but I didn't mean it. I was angry. I wasn't thinking clearly. I've been miserable without you. You're my daughter. You're supposed to be there for me. The words were designed to pull at my heartstrings. The apology was designed to make me feel like I was the unreasonable one. The declaration that she was miserable without me was designed to make me feel powerful, like I could fix this. It was the same manipulation, just with different words. I closed my eyes and I spoke slowly, calmly. Mom, you told me we were done. I believed you. You meant it in that moment. And I accepted it. I didn't mean it, Claire. I need your help. Just this once. Please. And I realized in that moment that just this once had been the phrase of my entire adult life. Just this once, I'd give money. Just this once, I'd solve her problem. Just this once, I'd prioritize her needs over my own. There was never just one time. There was always another time. Another crisis. Another request. Another opportunity for her to remind me of what I supposedly owed her. You only remember that I'm your daughter, I said quietly, when you need saving. She started to cry. Not the dramatic sighs I'd heard 1,000 times before, but real tears. I didn't mean it. You're my daughter. I know who I am, I said. I'm just not going to keep living for you. And then I did something I'd never done in my entire relationship with my mother. I hung up while she was still talking. Didn't wait for a response. Didn't give her a chance to manipulate me further. I turned off my phone, sat in the dark of my apartment, and felt the weight of an entire lifetime starting to lift. That phone call wasn't just the end of a conversation. It was the end of a lifetime of emotional manipulation. It was the moment I realized that I didn't need my mother's approval or her love, not if it came with conditions I couldn't sustain. And for the first time, I was truly at peace with that realization. A year passed. 12 months of relative quiet. 12 months of building a new life. I'd been saving aggressively, putting away every extra dollar. I didn't travel extravagantly. I didn't buy things I didn't need. But I also didn't feel guilty about every small pleasure. I ate nice dinners. I went to concerts. I invested in myself and my future instead of drowning in the debt of other people's problems. And then I found it. A small colonial house on the south side of Chicago, in a neighborhood that was up and coming. It had good bones, hardwood floors, and most importantly, it had potential. It was my own. Not a rental. Not an apartment. My own house. I closed on a Friday in April. When I got the keys, I sat on the living room floor and I cried, but not sad tears. Relief tears. Gratitude tears. I'd done it. I'd built a life for myself that didn't depend on anyone else's approval or validation. One of the first things I did was hire a landscaper. I spent an entire Saturday planning my backyard. And in the center of that backyard, I planted roses. Red ones, white ones, pink ones. I planted them because my father had loved them. I planted them in a place where they belonged to me, and only me, and that was what made them beautiful. A few months later, through a mutual acquaintance from our old neighborhood, I learned what had happened to my mother. She'd had to sell the house. The house my father had built. The house she'd tried to give to David alone. She'd had to sell it to pay off the debt from the home equity loan she'd fraudulently taken out in David's name. The legal fees. The penalties. She'd had to start over at 56 years old with very little. David had moved out of state, cut off contact with both of us, and started his own life as far away from our dysfunction as possible. For a moment, I felt guilty. The old guilt trying to creep back in, reminding me that I was supposed to save her, that I was supposed to fix this. But then I remembered something my therapist, yes, I finally got a therapist, had said: you are not responsible for the consequences of your mother's choices. You are only responsible for your own. And I realized that wasn't cruel. That was wisdom. So I planted those roses and I let myself breathe. A few months later, I got a letter in the mail. Official looking. Legal. From my mother's attorney. She was contesting my father's will, claiming that the distribution was unfair, that I owed her something. I handed it to my own attorney and I didn't think about it again. That's what happened when you finally stepped away. Other people's crises stopped becoming your responsibility. Here's what I've learned in the 3 years since that text that said, "We're done." Sometimes, the word family doesn't mean the people who share your DNA. It doesn't mean the people who raised you or gave birth to you. Sometimes, family means people who love you out of genuine care. People who choose you. People who want the best for you, not what's best for them. And sometimes, truly, the bravest thing you can do is let the people who raised you go. I don't hate my mother. I genuinely don't. When I hear that she's struggling, some part of me still feels a pang. But I've learned to sit with that pang and not act on it. I've learned that compassion doesn't have to mean self-sacrifice. Love doesn't have to mean losing yourself. I stopped trying to earn a love that always came with conditions. I stopped proving my worth through financial contribution or emotional availability or willingness to clean up other people's messes. And in doing that, I found something more valuable than any inheritance. I found myself. My mother's last message to me was that text. "We're done." But that's not where my story ended. That's where it began. And giving me that ultimatum, in finally showing me who she really was beneath all the manipulation and guilt, she gave me the greatest gift she ever could have: the permission to leave. And I took it. And I've never looked back.